Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and this is going to be my part 2 of my honest and in-depth Total War 3 Kingdoms review. So check out part 1 if you haven't checked it out already. I didn't have my timer up on the second screen, so I ended up being like way more in-depth than I intended, talking about the armies. So in this section, we're going to talk about politics and tech in general, and then we'll talk about city management as well. So we'll try to do this one a little bit faster, maybe 30 minutes or so. But I just wanted to give you not only just a generic review of the game, but also show you firsthand, in depth, some of these different systems and how they work, so that you can decide if that's something that you'd be interested in. So like I said before, and this will become more clear when we start talking about the politics, the tech, and especially the cities, that I think this game might cater a lot more to a more casual audience that is not trying to create content for YouTube, which is not me, right? I try to go for like, the really challenging type of stuff, challenging for what I would consider to be the right reasons, interesting reasons, instead of frustrating reasons, and something that people would enjoy watching, something where if I really learn and become proficient at it, then it's got a lot of replayability, so I can keep creating good, fresh content for it. Warhammer is a great example of this. They're, coming out with a lot of unique, very different factions that give you a distinct feel where you're constantly like, even though I've played thousands of hours on Warhammer, there's still different tactics and different things I'm trying out that I'm learning. There's a really robust mod community. There's lots of great stuff for it. So I think Warhammer is a great benchmark for doing that with a single player game, something that can continually renew itself and be interesting and engaging for people. Obviously multiplayer games like, League of Legends that I mentioned before, that is just updating, and the meta evolves, you're playing against other people, all of that is almost always going to be relevant for content creation. But single player stuff, sometimes it's tough. If you just beat the game, sometimes people don't want to see it again. So with Total War, Warhammer, I think it accomplishes it. With this game, not so much, but I think that it could still be good for people overall who just want to play it and just kind of get that single player experience, get some good value out of it. Okay, but let's go ahead and kick it off here talking about the politics and tech. So let's talk about the politics first. We talked about a little bit of it in the last episode with sort of these dilemmas that you can get with your different generals, and some of this is really, it feels bad, that I mentioned before. Like I said last time, I spent thousands and thousands of gold on a general that had some superstitious dream. It dropped his happiness a lot, and he just left our faction the next turn. So complete waste there. And then this guy, even though I vetted him, even though I looked at him, he had really high happiness at the time. It said that he had a faction fondness for us, all of these positive things. Now our faction leader hates him. And now our heir to the faction leader also hates him. So now we have to get rid of him. And that sucks. So that part of the politics is bad. You can get some cool stuff, like when they come into battle, these people that have been with each other and have won a lot of fights together. So, Xinjiang, sorry, I'm going to butcher the names. I can't really pronounce Mandarin that well. But the Bandit Queen and the heir have won a lot of fights together, so they really like each other. And then when they're in combat, they get some like little buffs. They'll get like 12% extra evasion, which is nice, and a couple little buffs like that. So that's kind of cool. I wish there was like more to that, but it feels like the negative stuff is extremely devastating and the positive stuff is very limited. Like, it's cute, they say they like each other, but you don't, like, sometimes you get positive events. I got one really early on in the campaign. It's like, do you want to give this person this positive trait, or do you want to give this person this positive trait? And I just feel like I haven't seen that enough. Like, you're just not rewarded enough for like good management of characters. You get a little bit, but it feels like you're doing it mostly to not get punished. So it's like negative reinforcement. So it's like, I need to get this guy out of my faction, primarily because if I don't, then he's either going to leave or he's going to give them negative traits. So that's what feels bad. The superstitious guy, bad event. Okay, I just lost 8,000 gold worth of, 5,000 for hiring him and 3,000 for mustering. So that part of it feels really bad. You do build up some rivalries with other like faction leaders and things like that. People that you fought before. Like, I've been fighting this guy. Personal rivalry, wars, all that kind of stuff. But it's not really that much more than usual, where it's like, okay, you've been fighting a faction, they don't like you very much. Or, okay, there's someone that's like political adversaries with you or whatever, they're not going to like you. So like vampire counts, you know, in Warhammer versus like humans aren't going to like them. You know, chaos and dwarves aren't going to like chaos. So it feels like it's not much more advanced than that. Like, it's very rare that you see something like, okay, if you did really good political management, someone who may not normally like you is all of a sudden going to like you. You know, if you're a yellow turban, you know, some of these empire people probably not going to like you a lot of the time, regardless of how you try to interact with them diplomatically. I'm a bandit queen, so, you know, some of these people probably not going to like us. Han's probably not going to like us that much, regardless of what we do. So it doesn't feel like it adds that many extra layers of complexity. There are some post-battle sequences which are kind of cool, where you can choose, do you want to hire this lord on, and so you can potentially take some of their generals, or do you want to get a little extra cash for them, or do you want to execute them and potentially get one of their items. That's kind of cool. It's not really that game-breaking. Occasionally you get kind of a cool general, like this guy that I got here I thought was really cool, but ended up being pretty rough, so that part of it's okay. As far as the rest of the politics, it's interesting. Like, there's potential here. I don't know if it's on Legendary or what. Like, it's not clear to me what the penalties are on Legendary. I'm playing, you know, Legendary Battles, Legendary Campaign. So it doesn't really tell you what the penalties are. You don't get a public order penalty like you do with other games. So I'm not really sure. So maybe they just won't do the tributaries and things like that because of the Legendary thing. But, like, a major thing with Bandit Queen is you're supposed to be able to get tributaries. Like, as you level up your infamy, as you win all these battles and things like that, it's like, okay, I get plus 50% tribute in diplomacy. So I don't know if that means that they're 25% more likely to do it, or that income from tributaries. High infamy increases prestige. Income from tributaries. Okay, so not your chance of getting them. Well, that's all good, but, like, no one ever agrees to that. If I go to quick deal, demand tribute. I mean, at one point, I don't know what rank I am right now, but it says I'm, like, comparable with this guy. Like, I think I'm probably at least a top 10 faction on the map right now. And, you know, like, nobody is even remotely close to doing tribute with me. And I've tried to fight them, like, even when someone's gonna die. So, like, when we almost killed the other bandit guy here, or, you know, when we almost killed this guy over here, we tried to offer him tribute, and there was no way they would do it. I was like, okay, if I make peace with you, tribute. We even made peace with this. There was, like, a dude up here. We made peace with him temporarily because he was willing to pay us, like, 1,500 gold for it. And I was like, all right, well, he doesn't have a town anymore, so he's not really a threat. He just had this dinky army, and he was just trying to run around in the woods here and play hide and seek with me. I was like, whatever, I'll just get peace with him. And then I tried to tribute with him. It's like, nope, not going to do it. So even when they're on the brink of death, and I'm one of the top 10 factions on the map, like right now, then they still will not do tributaries with me. So, and it's not clear what I need to do to get tributaries for him. So, like, she has this mechanic that sounds cool. It's like, okay, you can scare people, you can intimidate them, you know, but, like, realistically, politically, it just doesn't matter. I can never use it. So that's cool and everything, but now if I was a more positive faction, if I was, like, someone who, like, does diplomacy and is, like, really friendly with a lot of people, like, maybe Cow might do that. There might be some other ones that do it. Some of these might be pretty cool. But a lot of them are just like, they look cool, but they're actually not that great. So, ask this character to yield to you. Military alliance, confederate. Let me look at negotiate here. So you can go in depth here and go to negotiate trade and marriage. So you can trade territory, you can get a trade agreement. These are all cool. There was one where it was like, I don't know how you vassalize people. Okay, this can only be proposed by kings. All right. So I guess you can only do it if you are king status. Okay, well, that makes sense. So a couple of these will tell you, but a lot of these won't work. You can issue ultimatums. That looks cool. There's one where it's like you can lose the game basically if you just become a part of their faction, like the campaign ends. So I guess maybe for like role playing that's cool, but it's like really goofy. So this results in the end of your campaign, abdicate emperorship. So if you just want to give up, you can do it like that. What is this? So yeah, like some of these things seem really cool, but they just don't come up a lot. So it's interesting. I think this is definitely an upgrade. So I think the diplomacy is an upgrade over even Warhammer and Attila, because there are a lot of different options, even if most of them are superfluous and don't really matter and aren't really, you know, on the table. If you're playing on Legendary, it's still cool. One thing that is interesting is you can trade ancillaries. So I could go down and like sell some of these units. So if I wanted to sell this, I could go to confirm. It'll tell you how many points that's worth, and then you can go through and request payment. Tells you how much this is worth, and then you can just type in some ludicrous number like 10,000 gold, press enter, they'll say no way, and then you can say make this work, and they'll tell you, all right, I'll give you 792 gold. So I wish it would tell you that straight up, but you can sell some of those items. So I know in like Warhammer, if you're going around killing everybody, you'll just end up with just like, you know, a huge sheet of items that you can't put on anybody, or that are like duplicates. So that is pretty cool that you can get some value out of that and sell them. So I've just been selling most of my items because a lot of them just don't matter that much early on. It's like you get 4 extra resolve or something. It's like, who cares? It doesn't, I'd rather have, you know, 500 gold for it. So it is cool that you can sell the ancillaries, especially for unpopular factions like Bandit Queens and maybe the Yellow Turbans and things like that. If people aren't outright at war with you, you can still sell them stuff. And they seem to have almost infinite gold. Like I've sold like 3,000 gold worth of like these ancillaries to a single faction in a turn. So that's interesting. And like Warhammer, you can't do more than one like diplomacy per turn hardly. Usually they don't have very much gold, a lot of the factions that you try to do diplomacy with. So that's kind of cool. You know, I like that overall. It's a step in the right direction. I wish there were more options out there. Like I wish I could actually, you know, try to intimidate people. Maybe that's a mid to late game thing when I'm like super powerful and very scary. Maybe I can do tributes then. I haven't gotten much past kind of the early to mid game, you know, like maybe 50 turns into a campaign. So, so that's interesting. That's cool, I guess. Some other stuff that you can do is you can go into the court system. Now, I think this kind of sucks. I think this is actually a step down from Attila. The Attila court system was actually pretty cool because there's a lot of intrigue. You were trying to balance out your faction versus the other factions, and there were like certain reasons why you would try to go up or down. So if you wanted more public order, you would actually try to lose, I forgot what they were called, but you would try to lose some of the influence of your family so that other people would, you know, trust you more and like not be as scared. So it would improve your public order, but it would like hurt some other things, right? It would like hurt loyalty with generals. It would maybe hurt your income a little bit, I think, but you could get public order, and public order is a big deal in Total War Attila when you're trying to manage all those with the Russian Roman Empire. That's all that I played in Total War Attila. It was a lot of fun, but you know, it was intricate. You were trying to see, okay, how are some different like things I could do? What could I do with this character? How could I spin their influence on this and that? You know, there are all kinds of things you could buy to promote your character to like different ranks that were pretty cool. It's like, okay, this is my good general. All right, I want to try to level him up and get him to be horse master, and then I can put a bunch of cavalry with him. That'll be sweet. And then he'll be happy because I'm giving him a higher position, and then that will lower my influence because he's in my family, and that'll give me better public order, and I can give him this awesome wife. I can spend some of my influence points to get this cool wife that's going to give him some extra buffs, you know, on the battlefield. Or if he's a governor, I can give him some buffs as governor with his wife. Like, there were all these, like, cool interactions that you were trying to balance out. Like, it wasn't super intricate, but it was cool. Like, there was some stuff you can do with it. Now, everything just is very linear and sucks. It's like, okay, you have to be a high rank to get this stuff, so you're just not really doing anything in court for the first 100 turns of the campaign. And these guys just kind of sit here. You can't do anything with them. You can promote them, which basically just gives them happiness, and you have to pay them more money, which is like really generic and kind of lame. Once again, it's kind of a feels bad. You're doing it so that you don't get something negative, so you don't feel good about doing it. It's just like you just don't want to lose the general, so you have to do it. Or you can release them or banish, which is cool in theory, but you would never do this. For 800 gold, it's not worth getting negative 25 satisfaction among all of your generals. Like, when would you ever do that? Like, maybe late game if you're just massively overflowing with satisfaction, but if it's late game, you're not going to need the 800 gold. So, like, this would be extremely rare to get this used. So, you don't even know what these do. Like, I can't even hover over this and figure out and just look forward to it. Like, oh, man, I can't wait until I get to the Grand Commandant. It's like I would have to go to a third-party website and, like, watch someone else walking through this stuff. So, the information here is really sparse. It's definitely a step down from Attila. There are some systems. Total War doesn't have a lot of systems like this, but there are some that I think are a bit more interesting. Like, Empire has some, but, I mean, Total War Warhammer doesn't do systems like this. I mean, I'm trying to think of a faction that has, like, this kind of family system that would be interesting. There's not much of it. Like, the Wood Elves have something like that, too. But, yeah, not really the strong suit of Warhammer, but it has so many other strong things that you don't need a core system. So, that's one thing about historical Warhammer that I'll just throw out there right now, like, or historical titles versus Warhammer. I know they're going to be worse in combat because they just can't keep up. Like, there's just no way. There's so much more creativity. There's so many more different unit types and stats and things that you can do in a fantasy game. You can't have dragons, you know, in a historical title. You can't have trolls, you know, like there's you can't have magic really, although they do that some in the romance mode. Just there's going to be so much more diversity and so much more intrigue and so much more fun with the battles in Warhammer Fantasy. But what I would expect out of a historical title is, okay, well, there's going to be a lot more attention to city management, politics, you know, complicated things like that, right? Like, that's what I liked about Attila. I was like, okay, I need to min-max my food. I need to min-max my sanitation, my gold. All of these buildings have pros and cons to them. I have to choose how much I want to level up my towns. I had that really cool, like, intrigue that I just talked about with the kind of the family system and the politics and marriage. All that stuff is more complicated than Warhammer. And I like that. I like the city management and all that min-max stuff. But here it just doesn't matter, as far as I can tell. At least not for the first, you know, 75 to 100 turns before you start leveling up. It's just not going to matter. Look at Family Tree. I just married this random dude. I wasn't sure what was going to happen if I married this dude. But they seemed like they liked each other a little bit. Desires a court position. Well, he's pissed about that. I can't give him a court position. Even though I'm 35 turns in, even though I've wrecked everything around me on the map right now, I'm still, like, nowhere close to leveling up. If we look at the level up system here, which I think is kind of wonky too, I'm still not an outlaw. This is what I've got after 35 turns of aggressive expansion, like it says I'm supposed to do here. I mean, I had, like, what did I say? I had, like, 10 towns at one point on the map, and I'm still nowhere close to leveling this up. Like, it's still going to take a long time to get this prestige. So I'm not even going to be able to get an administrator or a spy or even give somebody a court position for the first 100 turns. That's just way too slow on the development end. So that's really frustrating. As you level it up, it's pretty generic. You get some extra armies, slots, administrators. This is basically like Imperium from Total War Attila. So it's all right, I guess, but it's just very generic stats and things it seems like you can get. Oh, I get plus 50% tribute and diplomacy. Awesome. Well, no one's going to tribute with me. Maybe when I get really high up eventually. So pretty generic. Takes a really long time to get on board with it. The family thing, I'm just guessing. I had no idea if this was a good idea to marry this person or not. They don't give each other extra stats at all. He just joins my court. I could put him in as a military person if I want to, but I probably won't because he's a yellow lord and not a blue or a green one, so he's pretty worthless. I get this kid. I have no idea what's up with this. It's age 1. You know, it's going to take, whatever, 40 turns. I think each season is a turn. So it's going to take 40 turns before they're even 10. So it's going to take an additional 72 turns or something before they're 18. So, like, see you in 72 turns. Maybe you'll be a decent general. You know, it's like, who cares? There's so many random generals that come in and out that I could hire all the time, or that I could take from enemies when I beat them. It just seems really random. And I have no idea. Like, I could potentially make this person heir. So if I make them an heir, it gives me some extra satisfaction. It would piss off Liu Zhang. I could divorce, but I don't gain anything from that. And it would cost me 1,000 gold. Okay, I mean, I could try to marry her off to another character. It would cost 2,000 gold to do that, though. So yeah, there's just no reason to do it. In Attila, there are reasons to do this because, like, your wives would give you benefits. Now, all of your generals had to be men. They could switch this up, you know, if they wanted to make it more gender neutral, like they kind of do in this game. There are different, you know, women and men for each of these different positions, and that's cool. I like that. But, like, whoever your spouse is, like, they should give each other some kind of bonuses or something, right? Even if you can, you know, I guess you get a general, but it's like they don't even get any perks or bonuses, right? Like, it's bereft. Like, there's just no, it's just bereft of meaning. You know, it's like, why even care about this? All that I get is a general and a kid. As far as I know. Once again, there might be hidden features. You might get certain bonuses if you get a big family. You might, like, you get some diplomacy, right? Like the person that I married from this, that's obvious. You know, you get some diplomacy with the person. So I guess, you know, that's the thing. If we look at this guy, like, he kind of likes us because we had a diplomatic marriage a little bit, but overall he still hates us. So I don't know. It just seems really inconsequential. It seems like a definite step down. Why not just bring in the Attila stuff? That was fine. Like, I like that system. Then you have all these character relationships here, like a huge web that you're never going to read because it doesn't matter. It's like, okay, people on like, people that are part of your crew hate all the enemies that we fought. That's basically it. And they mostly like themselves, except for, like, a random general that sometimes they hate. So, like, they've got this cool stuff here if you're just kind of looking around, but it doesn't change your gameplay at all. I don't think. I mean, like, it can influence politics, I guess, but it's like, who cares? They all hate me anyways. Once again, maybe if you're Cow, maybe if you're, like, the diplomacy and you just want to chill in your chair and watch Netflix and, like, let your town level up or something, like, maybe this is relevant. But, you know, as someone who min-maxes, as someone who plays politics very carefully in Attila and Total War and all of this stuff, I just don't think that this system really, like, matters as much as, like, it seems like it should. It's like, someone who hates you might declare war on you. They'd probably hate you anyways, right? Like, there's very little, like, outright backstabbing that I've seen where it's like, oh, your general really likes you. Well, now they're gonna fight you. I don't know. Like, it matters some, I'm sure, but it just feels like it's not really affecting my decisions like that much. As long as my core generals are chill with what's going on, then it's fine. You know, I've had some random generals walk out, and for the most part, they don't matter. Like, the purple guy early on walks out, who cares? He's level 1. There was some random green, you know, champion guy that wasn't happy that I started off the game with. He walked out. Whatever, doesn't matter. Like, that much, really? Because there's going to be more people that show up to take their place eventually. Or you, like, win combat with people and you just take one of their lords. So it's not like there's a really limited supply of low-level lords that you can pick up. So I just don't think the politics really matter that much at the end of the day. Okay, so they do tell you what they want when they're trading, when you're trying to trade the ancillaries or something else. That's cool. They'll put a number on it. They'll say, you know what? If you pay us a zillion gold, we'll do this. So that's cool, so you don't have to play guess and check. So that's an upgrade. So some of this stuff is an upgrade. I think that the, you know, like I said, the trading screen and stuff like that is pretty good. But overall, I think that the politics side of it seems weaker than Attila from what I've seen. At least in terms of, like, the family tree. Okay. AI spams you with ridiculous requests. The turn timers aren't that long at the end, so it doesn't matter that much. But those ask you for random crap sometimes, and if you're not paying attention, you might accidentally press yes. I've never done that. They just ask you the most ridiculous stuff, like, hey, give us 5,000 gold and, like, 3 of your really good items, and by the way, give us a couple of your properties as well, and we'll give you a non-aggression. It's like, no. Like, sometimes they offer you something decent. Sometimes. They'll be like, okay, non-aggression, you give us 200 gold or something like that, you know. But a lot of times it'll just be these, like, outlandish requests where there's, like, no way you're ever going to say yes to it if you're paying attention and not, like, really high or something. Oh, sorry, I clicked over there and messed up my whole, messing it up again. There we go. Trying to keep an eye on the timer as well as my Google Doc that I mentioned last time over here to help keep me on track a little bit. So yeah, relationships don't matter that much. Let's look at the tech tree. We looked at it a little bit in the last video. I talked about it some, but it's just really uninspiring. Like, a lot of these techs, it's like, who cares? Like, I can get a tier 3 military building here. Okay, it's bad. I'm never going to use that building. You know, and that's how I feel about a lot of these. Like, okay, I can get a tier 5, like, Jade Artisans. It's like, okay, maybe I'll get that eventually, but it just feels really weak. Like, I guess minus 20% construction cost for mines. Like, that's okay. Like, some of the stuff's all right. You do get some units. Like, I get light axe band infantry. Like, why isn't that a standard unit? Like, it's not that great. So you can get some units through techs rather than, you know, certain towns and things that you can get. Like these Onyx Dragons, these light bow infantry. Like, they're pretty good, you know. They have 30 ammo. They do some decent damage. They're very expensive. They have nice range. They don't have any special abilities. So yeah, there's some cool units like sprinkled in here somewhere. So you get the techs for the units instead of building things in your town, which is kind of cool, I guess. But like, none of these upgrade certain units. So you can't, like, it doesn't feel as good to specialize. It's like, oh man, I just got this cool tech for my archers. Now they're going to be a lot stronger, so I can go beat up the enemy archers. Or, you know, man, I just gave all of my halberds this cool new ability, right? Like, I just gave them all, like, poison tips on their halberds. Or I just gave them, like, I don't know, an extra, like, ability they can use to improve their, you know, vigor or stamina or whatever. Like, it's nothing like that, where you're, like, changing stuff around. Or, okay, I just reduced the cost of my horses, so now I can afford to get more horses. Like, a lot of the techs in Warhammer allow you to specialize in certain units and, like, certain types of strategies that are good. And it feels like there's some of that here, but a lot of it, once again, is kind of a feels bad rather than a feels good. Like, you're getting a tech for something that you should be able to do anyways. Like, why can't I just upgrade a tier 4 anyways if I have the gold and the resources for it? And, like, for some reason I want to do that. So, like, these aren't cool, unique buildings. It's just upgrades of existing buildings you already have that are usually very inefficient that you're not going to use in most of your towns unless you're sitting there doing a Netflix playthrough, right? Where you're just hanging out, you know, doing diplomacy and just teching up your main town or two, like, all the way to the top, right? And you're like, you know what? This is going to be a 1,000-turn campaign, and I just don't even care. That type of thing, right? So, if you're doing that, maybe these tier 4 and tier 5 buildings matter, but if you're just pressing in turn over and over again every turn and you're just waiting to get, like, very small incremental advantages. But the pacing's just so slow if you do that. So, like, some stuff is cool here, you know, like, you can get 10 diplomacy and 10 satisfaction with everybody. So, like, some of the stuff is all right, you know, minus upkeep for spies. Like, the stuff that I got down here, the 10% replenishment's really good. You know, minus 2 turns mustering, which is basically replenishment. Minus 2 turns mustering, which is basically replenishment. Some horses I probably won't use. Some, you know, recruitment costs for melee infantry. So there's some stuff in here. Like, it's not terrible. It's not terrible. It's just like, I don't know. It doesn't really change a lot tactically about what you're going to do. I'm still going to run mostly spears. I'm still going to run, you know, like, spears plus blue units, like, no matter what. So, I don't know. It's okay. One thing that is annoying is, like, regardless of, like, how high the tech is or how low the tech is, it's always the same amount of turns. So it's always 4 turns. So even if I want to diversify and say, you know what, I'm going to get a couple of these units over here, a couple of these techs, then I'm going to go over here, you're actually kind of penalized for doing that, because usually there's a sense of progression in a tech tree. If you focus on one thing, if I go all the way down this military thing, it gets more and more expensive as you go along, and you get bigger and bigger rewards. Whereas it feels like some of this stuff is just random. It's like, okay, minus 8% recruitment for spears and plus 1 starting rank for spears. It's like, okay, well, that's very similar to this, right? Which is minus 8% for melee infantry. That's even better because it's not just spears, it's swords and axes. And plus 8 satisfaction for vanguards, which, depending on how many vanguards you use, that could potentially even be better than this. So sometimes you have these cases where, like, later tier techs are actually way worse than lower tier techs. That should almost never happen. It should always feel like you're progressing into something that's like, wow, that's really good. This is good. Like this thing at the very end, this one's good. So they do that sometimes. But like sometimes like here, you know, extra rank for shot cavalry and recruitment rate. It's like, okay, well, once again, very similar to this. We get some lance cavalry here, which is cool, but I don't know. It's just not, it just feels kind of random sometimes. It doesn't have like a good linear sense of progression when you like commit to one tree, and you're penalized for diversifying. So in a lot of games, in Attila and in Warhammer, a lot of times you grab some early stuff in one tree, and then you go switch and you grab some early stuff in another tree, because as you go up one tree, the stuff gets more powerful, but it also gets more costly. And so usually it's better just to sprinkle in a little bit in multiple trees and just kind of cherry pick stuff that's going to be good for your strategy. Whereas here, you're highly encouraged to fully commit to one tree, because it's the same amount of turns no matter what, whether it's the very last tech in a tree that has like 10 prerequisite techs, or whether it's the very first blue tech over here, they're all 4 turns no matter what. So it just really hurts kind of that diverse play style where you can cherry pick different things, and where you can adapt. Maybe you get a hold of a couple of mines. You know, you went a certain way that you weren't planning in the campaign because the politics played out a different way than you expected. And all of a sudden you have a bunch of mines, and you start off going over here and you're like, hey, you know what? I've got some mines now. Maybe I want to come over here and like upgrade my mines and get some more commerce going. It's like, well, now it feels bad to do that because I've already committed to this. And, you know, getting some of these things like this for 4 turns is way, way stronger than anything tier 1. So you have to get this. Or this is way stronger than anything tier 1, but it's the same price. So it's just random. Like there's just randomly like just very strong things at certain points in trees for certain strategies, but like some of the build-up stuff is weaker and some of the stuff after it is weaker, and then diversifying is weaker. So it just doesn't feel cohesive. It doesn't feel like there's a very clear narrative about how you're like how you should be progressing through this tree. It just feels very random. Like they just slapped random stuff. Like, okay, we'll put some high tier units at the very end of some of these trees, and everything else we're just going to throw it in there, just slap it in there randomly. So I don't know. Not terrible, but really kind of lacks focus, lacks cohesion, lacks identity, I think. And so maybe on par with Attila. Maybe. Attila had some interesting choices between like military, like there was some tension there between like how far you wanted to go in the military. You know, did you go all the way up to get like, I think it was the elite Palatina, or did you go back down to get some of your city management stuff a lot earlier on in the campaign, whether you wanted to focus on your farms, whether you wanted to focus on your ports and things like that. Like there were some interesting choices there, whereas I feel like there's some of that, but not as much of it. So it's like, it's maybe on par with Attila, and I feel like it's weaker than most technologies in Total War. There are some bad techs, like the Greenskins, their tech tree is awful, terrible design, ridiculous. But there are also some really good tech trees that have like really interesting, diverse choices that you can do. So it kind of depends on the faction, but it's okay. This one's kind of a wash. It's probably on par with either one of those, most factions. So let's see, mini techs, unlock high tier buildings. Okay, Yellow Turban has a different tech tree. It's a little more linear, but I think there are more focused choices that you're making in that could be interesting. It's like, okay, I want this really powerful archer, I'm gonna go for this tech tree, or okay, I'm gonna upgrade this because I want this really powerful sword. So, and there's some of that in here, but I don't know. Yellow Turban's oversimplified, doesn't look as good, or more simplified, doesn't look as good, but might be a little more focused. I don't know. I haven't played a ton of Yellow Turbans other than scouting them out. So either way, it's all right. Could be better, but not terrible. Looks cool. And I don't have any experience with spies. I've heard the spy system is cool. I just haven't used it yet, even though I'm 35 turns in the campaign. Still not even close to being able to get a spy. So maybe by turn 100, we'll get a spy. I don't know if it's going to be that long. I am starting to snowball a little bit here. Maybe. So maybe I can do it. We'll talk about the city management. It just takes way too long to level this stuff up. But soon, maybe I'll get some spies. But I wanted to go ahead and release this video about a week after the game came out. I didn't want to wait much longer than that. So it might be cool. I don't know. Could be interesting. I don't have experience with it. Okay, finally, let's talk about city management, and we'll see if we can get this done in about under an hour here. Okay. This was the most frustrating part of the campaign by far for me. It's like the combat system, it's like, okay, generic. I expected it to be that way. You know, a little imbalanced in the units. I think that swords should be a lot stronger. I think swords should carve up spears. There should be no question, because swords are weak to cavalry. Swords should absolutely demolish spears, and that just doesn't happen. So it throws off the entire balance, the entire ecosystem of the game. Axes should demolish spears and should do very well against swords, especially low armor swords. But that doesn't happen either. So, unless you get a lot of like really good charge cycling off. But if you're charge cycling with infantry, why not just use cavalry? I guess you could say, well, you can charge cycle like the axes into the spears, and they won't, you know, get the penalty. Like, yeah, maybe there's some corner cases, but whatever. The combat's worse than Warhammer by a mile. I thought that was going to happen, but I wanted better city management. But that leads into the city management here. This is atrocious. It is really, really bad. And I heard some people saying, like, oh, it was going to be good. This was the hallmark. They were doing all these innovations with city management. This was going to be super cool. Like, yeah, almost everybody that reviewed the game said the combat is lacking. For different reasons other than me. Some of them are like, oh, the unit animations don't line up properly. Or, oh, you know, this or that, like, little nitpicky thing. It's like, no, there are deep strategic problems with balancing. Some people are like, oh, the AI is dumb. I think the AI is okay. It's like on par with most other Total War games. Like, it's not going to play as well as the best players that can possibly play the game, period. That's it. AI doesn't have the capacity to do that. I think it's fine. Just give them a lot of bonus stats. I know it's not a, you know, a popular opinion, but that's just, I don't know, that's how I feel about it right now. You know, maybe in 20 years, AI is going to be able to keep up with humans in a game like this, but there are just too many variables. It's just not fair to ask a company to be able to design an AI that could keep up with, like, top-end human players. It's just not going to happen. Or it would make the game, if somehow it could, it would make the game ridiculously expensive. You'd have to get, like, whatever Deep Blue or whatever the most current, like, massive AI is to try to make the game. You know, the game would be, like, $5,000 a copy or something. It's a ridiculous request. But, so I expected that. But the town system, holy cow, this town system is infuriating. Like I said in the last episode, right now I currently hold 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 towns. I have had as many as, before these guys started backdooring me, which we'll talk about here in a second, have had as many as 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 towns. The most money I was getting out of that, period, from taxes, was something like maybe 900 gold, for having 11 towns. 11 towns, 900 gold. That is absurd. Like, if you control that much property, if you've taken that many risks, if you're being that aggressive and exposing yourself and your army to that much danger over and over again, you should have rewards for that, especially because they can come through and backdoor this stuff. But I found most of the time, I don't even care about these towns. I don't even care if they're backdooring these towns. It doesn't matter. Because they're so worthless to begin with. Like, look at this thing. Okay, got ourselves a tier 1 town here. Let's check this out. How much money am I getting from this town? Oh, 0. So the town itself gives you 0 money. Now, I could build a building here. Okay. Let's look at the most efficient money building I can possibly build. Okay, so state workshops. 2 turns to build it. Almost 1,300 gold. Gives you 100 industry. So that means this is going to take 15 turns for this to break even. So I have to put this up, and I'm not going to start seeing a positive profit on this for 15 turns. And this is supposed to be the most efficient point, is the tier 1. It's almost always most efficient. Let's look at tier 2. Okay. 5 turns to build it. You say, well, 5, it kind of hovers in and out there. I don't know, it's bugging out. 5 turns to build a tier 2 building. 200 income. So I get 100 more income. So it's basically the same thing as buying another one of these, but it's 2,100 gold now. So that means it's going to take 21 turns once this is built for this thing to pay for itself. 5 turns onto the axe. It's not going to exist for 5 turns. That's 26 turns for this to pay for itself if you go for tier 2. That's wildly inefficient. Why would I do that? Why would I not just build another army? Instead of building tier 2s for this, why would I not just build other armies and just go sack more stuff? Like, a lot of the tier 1 towns with a building, if you sack it, you get like 3,500 gold. Versus if I were to occupy this, and it had something like, you know, a tier 1 one of these in it, it would take 35 turns for this to pay for itself, rather than just sacking it. 35 turns, and I could have the money instantly. 3,500 gold, that's nice. I can buy some stuff. I can buy some extra armies. Like, you should be rewarded for investing your gold. You're spending some of your upfront gold that you could be doing other more aggressive stuff with. You could get more armies. You could be more aggressive, but you're saying, you know what? In general, a good strategy game would do this. You would say, you know what? I'm going to dial back my aggression. I'm going to dial back some money, divert some money from my armies, and I'm going to invest it in this town, because this town is going to give me a really good ROI. It's going to give me a really good return on my investment over time. And so I'm willing to chill a little bit on my army to build this town. No, there's no reason to do that in this game. Unless, once again, you're, you know, doing a Netflix campaign. It's what I keep calling it, right? Where you're just going to sit here and chill, and you're okay if the campaign takes 1,000 turns. If you're just sitting there and chilling, yeah, this will pay for itself after 35 turns. And you will be able to, you know, eventually make some money. You're like, oh, sweet. Well, what happens if I go to this one? You know, oh, I get another 100, and I get to wait another 5 turns, and this time it costs me 3,000 gold. So now this is going to take not 26 turns, it's going to take whatever that number is, 35 turns to equal itself out now. Okay, cool. What about the next one? And it just gets worse and worse and worse. All that you get is 100 more gold every turn. That's it. And this has other requirements. You have to have a technology for this. You have to have a high-level tech, and you have to have, I guess you get unlocks resource industrialist. I'm not sure what that is. But you have to have multiple techs. For this one, you have to have a tech. For this one, you have to have a different tech, and it gives you some kind of resource. Industrialist, I don't know. Maybe that's super valuable. It better be damn valuable, because this is going to take 8 turns for this building. 8 turns for a building. That's absurd. It's going to take 46 turns. So, like, the combined turns for me to get to a 400 income gold building, let's add all this up. So, money. So this is going to be 1,200 plus 1,300. Or plus, yeah, we'll just call it 1,300. 3,400. Why even put the 50 in there, honestly? Like, you trying to sell a used car here or what? Like, why not just round it off at 3,000? Like, what the hell? They just trying to make it look less ridiculous or what? Anyways. 3,400 plus 3,000, that's 6,400 plus 3,800. 6,400, it's like, what, 10,200 plus an additional 4,600. We'll just round it off, call it 15,000. So it's 15,000 gold to get all the way up here. Building times, 8, 16, 21, 26, 28 turns. So 28 turns and 15,000 gold. And what's your reward for all that? 500 gold a turn. What? That's like, it's so bad. And every building's like that. Every building is like that. It's like, yeah, you can upgrade it, but it takes like a ludicrous amount of time, costs a ton of gold, and it's just not worth it most of the time. There are some where it's like, it's okay, I guess, if you upgrade it. Like, this is not that expensive, but like, this only gives you 30 more gold when you upgrade it. You're paying almost 600 gold in order to get 30 extra gold per turn. And it's going to take you 3 turns. So once again, 25 turns for this to pay for itself. Like, the efficiency of these buildings is so low. Like in Warhammer, like I mentioned in the last episode, even a money building that's not that good, like a high elf money building or something, is almost always 10 turns to pay for itself. Maybe 11 turns, maybe. Like, 1 turn to build, and it'll give you like 100 gold, and it costs 1,000 gold to build it. Like, that's a bad one. A good one, like Greenskins in the base campaign, I think it's like 600 gold to build their gold building, and it gives you like 200 gold a turn. So it pays for itself in like 3 turns. There are several factions where you can get a gold building and it will pay for itself in under 10 turns at the tier 1. The tier 2 is usually like maybe 13 to 15 turns to pay for itself, depending on the faction, right? And then it's only once you get to those tier 3 buildings, that's when it starts to be like 22 turns, 23 turns, right? But it has a much smoother power curve. It's much more reasonable. You still have a reason to protect tier 1 towns, but there's no reason to protect them here. Also, no walls. Even in your main town, someone can just walk up, attack it in turn 1, and all you're going to have is a little dinky garrison. I don't even have a garrison here right now. Small town doesn't even have a garrison. So they could just literally just walk up and take this town right now. But like some of these other towns, like this one. This one has a decent garrison. It's like 4 units. Main town here. Am I just not seeing the garrison, or these like literally do not have a garrison? I thought that the main town had a garrison. Does it not? That does. I've been fighting main town garrisons. Okay, this one does. But this is like a this is a big city. Really? The small town? I thought it had a garrison. This one has a garrison. How does he have that garrison? Maybe it has to be tier 2 before you get a garrison. Okay, so it might, maybe tier 1 doesn't even have a garrison. I could have sworn that a tier 1 had a garrison, but okay, so it's just got a dude sitting there. Wait, how does it have, maybe it's got another captain there too. I don't know. Anyways, garrisons, laughable. You just walk in, just take it. And you can't get, like, you can only get walls in your town whenever you level them up all the way to tier 4. So here's the progression. You can go up to a tier 10 town. Why do there need to be 10 tiers for towns? But your first 3 take multiple turns to upgrade. Like, this is 4 turns. I imagine this would be 4 or 5 turns to build this. 4 turns per town to upgrade. And they give you no money. Zero money, terrible garrison. Like a 4-unit garrison. Even in the small town here, the tier 4 with the walls, it's a pretty bad garrison. It has a little bit more because I built a garrison building that gives me 4 extra. So these are extra, but this is all your garrison would normally be in a small city, just 1 little regiment to try to hold this whole big city. So the garrisons are extremely flimsy. You have to level up to a tier 4 town. At tier 4, you still don't make money. You get 25% extra income from peasantry and commerce. So you have to level up those other buildings that are really inefficient and really terrible, like I talked about before. That's the only way you can get any money off of this town. So like this whole town with a tier 4 city, which costs, I don't know how much gold, a lot, probably 10,000 gold or something to level it up to this. Then I have a tier 2 fishing town, which would cost another, you know, couple thousand gold. You're looking at easily 10 to 12,000 gold for this town, and all that I'm getting is 241 taxes for it right now. That's it. So why, like, that's like a 2% return on your investment. Why? Like, the only reason that I did not sack this and take like the 8,000 gold that I could have gotten off of sacking this, which would be 40 turns worth of waiting on income from this. The only reason I did that is you have to have these towns for prestige, because that's the only way you level up. You have to get prestige. So you can get prestige through your rating, like your infamy mechanic, but you also have to get it through towns. And so like that's the only reason to level it up, is because it's part of your win condition. So once again, just like a lot of other stuff in this game, it feels bad. Like you get it because you have to, not because you're excited about it. It's like, okay, I have to have walls, I guess, so just some random like little 4-unit army can't take my town randomly from me. And you know, I get 12 prestige. So I get to spend 12,000 gold to get 12 prestige, basically. And then these little towns, you can't build any sort of walls around them, so they can always come up and attack this town anytime they want. Yeah, they do have a little 6 stack here, and you do still get some towers and things like that in the towns, but you're not going to have walls. They can go over and take it easily in 1 turn. And this little thing, these little resource buildings don't give you very much to begin with. This gives you food, which is nice. You're gonna have to have it for bigger towns, but once again, it feels bad. You're only getting this because you want, like, you have to level up this town. So yeah, it has an upkeep cost to it as well. So not only is it not giving me any money, I have to have it anyways. I have to have any resource because it gives me 5 prestige, and I need that to win. It's giving me some food. Everything just feels bad about it. It's like leveling up the town. You're just like, God, I guess I gotta level this crap up. Which shouldn't be how it is. Like, because you don't get anything cool. All that you get more and more penalties from food production. You get some extra money from commerce. You get some extra, like, building slots so that you can build some more, like, terribly inefficient buildings. And you eventually get prestige, but, like, you need to do it for the prestige. That's pretty much it. Like, the population really doesn't matter that much, as far as I can tell. You get, like, some paltry upgrades to your replenishment. Like, you get some extra peasantry income. You get a little bit of extra replenishment. You know, you can maybe put, like, an administrator or something in there. But as far as I've seen, just the population really doesn't matter. Like, 2% replenishment. You could get up to 25% replenishment. So that stuff does matter if you start to get, like, these massive, massive towns. Then sure, you do get some nice bonuses to replenishment, but you've got to invest like 50,000 gold just to make these things work. You have to get public order to balance all of that out. You have to get food production to balance all of that out. You have to have someone around to protect it because this garrison is still probably going to get mowed over by a full army. And you just spent 50,000 gold for someone to come in and take it from you. So all of it just feels bad. Versus when you're thinking about Total War, when you're upgrading the towns there, it feels good because you get, like, at least in some of your main capitals, you get high tier units. You're like, oh man, this is sweet. I can finally hire these giants, or I can finally hire this dragon, or whatever. There are lots of landmark buildings. You're like, oh, this is cool. I've got this iron mine, so I can upgrade and get all these bonuses to my swords. You do have some of that. Like, I've got a horse pasture over here or something, or I had one before I gave it up. Maybe, where was it? It was here. And that gives you, like, some little bonuses, you know, upkeep production for horses. So there's a little bit of that there, but there are so many landmark buildings. They're just really cool. You're like, man, I want to go get that. That's going to give me these bonuses to these units. Or, you know, I want to go get this other place because it's going to give me these other benefits. Like these landmark buildings. So it can feel good to level up certain things in Warhammer. But in this, it just feels like a real chore. It's going to take forever. It's going to cost you a bazillion gold. You're going to get to catch up on all your favorite shows on Netflix. It's just way too slow. I think it just really encourages a campy playstyle where you just sit there in your garrison and protect this massive investment that you have to make. So, I don't know. That's frustrating. Like I said, it's way, way, way more efficient to just sack these cities, especially early on, until you need to try to win the game, and then you can go through and get your prestige by occupying some higher level cities. But by and large, it's usually better just to sack it, or at least loot and occupy so you get some money out of it. Once again, other factions, you know, might be a little bit better. Bandit Queen is someone who does like to sack and pillage and things, but it's still, I imagine, is going to be really inefficient for most factions. And I just feel like there's not a lot of strategic tension here. Like, some people are talking about, oh, there's all these diversity of, like, buildings. It's like, no, there's not. Like, you can build these different buildings, but most of them suck because they're really inefficient. So, like, what are you going to have to get? Okay, you're going to have to get the food, or you're just never going to be able to upgrade your town. So, you're going to have to get these farms. So, it's going to give you some money, some food production, so you can actually upgrade the town. I don't know which one of these you want. So, yeah, you're never going to do the selling your food, probably. Okay, so yeah, you're basically going for this. For your extra food so you can level up your town and get your prestige. That's just not worth it. There are easier ways to get money. That's not worth it at all. Minus 18 food? Are you kidding me? For 170 gold? Why would you ever do that? I mean, you get a lot of growth, I guess. Even this, 190 gold, minus 20% income from commerce, 24 food. Their numbers are just way off. It just feels like they had a toddler just roll dice on some of these numbers or something. Like, why would you ever do that? It's so wildly inefficient. This is already inefficient, but you have to do it just so you can level up your town, so you can get prestige and eventually win the game. But yeah, this is just nutty. So you have to have this. You're going to have a military building if you ever want to leave your property. You're going to have to upgrade this. I don't think you get extra garrison, from what I can tell. Nothing gives you a bigger garrison, so there's no reason to level these up. I guess you can get public order. But if you want any kind of garrison, you have to get one of those. You probably need to get this for money. Well, not that one. The state workshops or whatever. Yeah, this one. You probably have to get it for money, even though it just sucks, like I just talked about. You need some kind of income. You might as well. You probably get the inn. Whoa, it's that bad? Really? It's that bad? 250 is the maximum amount you can get? I guess you get 80% from commerce with that. 100% commerce from that. So I guess you can upgrade this for the commerce. You can upgrade this and get, like, you know, extra from commerce percentages and things. So, you know, that's 150% from commerce. So, like, really late game, and you can gain extra trade influence if you're trading a lot. So if you have a ton of trading partners, you upgrade this, you get extra trade influence, which I think means you get more money out of trade agreements. Maybe that's worth it. Maybe that's how you're supposed to get all your money with most factions, is you just try to get 1 million trade agreements and just upgrade your marketplace and your inn. And your main town also gives you extra money from commerce. So I guess that's how you might do it with most towns. But once again, that's super linear. Like, you just have to stack all of the commerce, get a food building, and that's it. Maybe a military building, you know? But there's no tension there. There's no, like, you're going to have a very clear choice in every single town that you get. These are the things you want, right? Whereas, like, in Warhammer, there's so many different, like, you have to decide, do I want a growth building here? Like, these are real choices early on. Do I want a growth building so I can tech up faster and get higher tier units? So that I can get a military advantage? Or do I want to, you know, am I just running really low on cash and I need to get the money building right now? Or do I want to build, like, some walls with a real garrison that can actually defend a town against some certain armies? Or do I have to get this public order building because I'm playing on legendary and I've got like really bad public order penalties? Or am I cool with, like, coming back in to kill those rebellions whenever they show up? So this is real tension between, like, growth, money, public order buildings, and getting a garrison. Like, and you might do different things in different towns, you know? Maybe something is kind of close to where you expect enemies might be and you put a garrison there, or maybe something is relatively secure and you're going to put a money building there. If there's a port or something like that, it might throw a wrench in your plans because you're like, well, I have to have this port, so maybe, you know, I've got to choose. I can't get a military building here. I've got to do a public order building here because I lose a slot off the port. So there's a lot of different choices, and a lot of towns can look very different. Even though, like, there's not 10 stacks of towns, you know, and, like, 10 different, like, levels. Like, this is artificial diversity. It's not real diversity. It just takes longer to do the campaign, but you're still doing the same thing. You're like, what's the most efficient money thing? Okay, I'm gonna do that. And then maybe I throw a public order building in there. Maybe I throw, you know, a military building in there. But by and large, you're probably gonna be doing the same thing in most of these towns. It's going to be very cookie cutter. So I don't know. It looks like there's a lot of diversity, but I really don't think there is, as far as I can tell. You know, if you are playing one of those factions where you want to level up all this stuff and just watch Netflix for 100 turns, then you probably will just play, like, you'll just probably go for things like the Grand Tea House and Marketplace and just stack all of the commerce money buildings. And then if you need to, throw in some public order somewhere in there. Or if you have a specialty building that's worth a flip, do that. I mean, her building is okay, I guess, maybe late game. The tributary stuff actually sucks. Like, I guess if you get a lot of tribute, it can be nice, but like I said, it's really hard to get the tribute. What was it? There was one building that tax building sucks. Anyways, it doesn't matter. So yeah, it's pretty disappointing because I think it's very oversimplified. Even in Attila, like, you still had that tension. Do I want a growth building? Do I want a sanitation building to control sanitation here? There are, like, different kinds of money buildings depending on the fertility of the soil and things like that. There is something with fertility and agriculture in here, but it doesn't matter really. public order. Like, there were some decent options in Attila. You could spend a long time managing towns. But here, depending on your faction, it's probably going to be very, very cookie cutter. And I suspect a lot of factions, if you aren't a bandit, if you're playing like an easier faction that just kind of chills and does diplomacy, you're probably just going to be stacking mostly commerce with, like, you know, little food and things like that. So, anyways, so it encourages very long, campy campaigns so you can get to your higher tiers if you want to get any money, but you're not getting any cool elite units by doing that, and so some of that can just be a feels bad, but anyways, that's going to be it for this guide. Thank you for this review. Thank you very much for tuning in. We're at about an hour. So once again, final verdict. It's okay, you know, if you don't mind doing a slower campaign and having wildly inefficient buildings, but you're cool with taking 50 turns, you know, to get up your main building in a town, and you just want to sit there and protect it for a long time, you know, it's okay. Yellow Turbans might be a little different. Once again, I think they win the campaign. Like, I think you can get, I'm going to have to check. I'm going to have to, you know, look at a Yellow Turban campaign, and maybe Yellow Turban would be more my style. But I think with Yellow Turbans, it's based on how much, like, it's kind of like prestige, but I think you can get a building that gives you prestige in your main towns at low tier a lot earlier in the campaign. I think. I'll have to double check that. I'm not 100%. So if that's the case, that would make me feel a lot better. But the fact that I have to level these things up to get any sort of decent prestige, and it just takes so long and so much gold, just feels really frustrating. So, I don't know. Maybe Yellow Turbans will be a little bit better. But as far as I can tell, pretty cookie cutter. Definitely a step down from Attila in terms of campaign management, which was really annoying because that's what I was looking forward to most with a historical campaign. I was like, sweet, I want to get in here and min-max the crap out of this. Where in reality, I'm just basically sacking every town and begrudgingly occupying it sometimes just so I can get prestige. But anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content, and I'll see you next time. Have a great day.